Right, so a massive new update has just launched for OpenClaw, and we're gonna go over what has changed and what this means for you, and kind of just simplify the change logs just a little bit. And for my tiny brain, well, I've tried simplifying it as much as possible. And at the end of the video, we're gonna go through some nice OpenClaw tips and things that have happened in the last 24 hours, or just things shared by the community that I agreed upon, I read about it, and I just felt, well, this is great. So let's just jump into what has changed. And as you can see, just an hour ago or so, we got this new update log right here. And well, I decided to make a little presentation for you guys. So yeah, let's just jump into it, right? So the first big update that we received is that now you can use Gemini 3.1 inside of OpenClaw. Well, once you update your OpenClaw. The release is still in beta, so it's going to take a little bit of time. But if you feel like you want to play around with that, you can update your OpenClaw using the beta channel. And the funny thing is, I actually used Gemini 3.1 inside of Anti-Gravity to help me generate this presentation right here to make things a little bit more smooth for you guys. So one thing that comes to mind whenever I'm thinking about using Gemini 3.1 for OpenClaw, I'm still probably going to be sticking around with 4.5 and 4.6. It does get a little bit costly, but you are also able to cost optimize by using sub-agents in different channels, if you're on Discord, for example, to basically set a new model for each of those sub-channels. But I will definitely be playing around with Gemini 3.1 because I do think that the model is fantastic. So basically, one thing that comes to mind is, as well, you could use Gemini 3.1 for drafting an initial thing. And then you can use Opus or another good model to basically polish that drafting. My only issue with that is that Gemini 3.1 might just not get it right in the beginning. So if the draft is bad, the final polish is probably not going to be too good. There is some overlap. I'm still going to test it out and just see what's up. All right, the second biggest update thing that we got going on here is security hardening. So a lot of people have been coming to me, and also whenever I'm posting on social media, especially on Facebook and LinkedIn, I'm not so popular on X, unfortunately, just yet. The first things that people, basically normal people, whenever they want to get into OpenClaw, the first concern they have is about security. And basically, I think this whole update is going to help kind of fix a lot of those concerns. Now, what happened was that they basically closed a bunch of holes that could lead to sketchy behavior, especially around tools, browser usage, and execution. So basically, it blocked the browser from being tricked into opening local files or weird protocols, which is especially useful when people are installing skills for OpenClaw, right? The biggest issue I see with skills right now is that you can make changes to your skills whenever, and some people might be running a cron job where they update all of their skills at once. Now, what happens here is that if somebody has malicious intentions and they decide to update their skill with maliciousness after it's been installed and it's been verified as safe, well, that poses a pretty good risk of you being prompt injected or another way of penetrating the system. I actually made a skill just a little bit while ago. I'll see if I can pull that up actually. So you can actually see the skill that I produced here basically goes over 15 different ways that you could get hacked or prompt injected or whatever, right? So it basically adds a layer of context to your OpenClaw of things that it should be cautious of, and basically adds a security layer to basically ask you for permission whenever something sketchy is happening, right? And it basically prevents somebody from stealing the session through a prompt injection by always verifying with you when it needs to do a very big change, such as giving your details away, right? But honestly, if you're adding your payment details to OpenClaw because you feel like you wanted to buy stuff on Amazon for you, I'm not sure it's really, I mean, you kind of served yourself in a way. If you want access to this skill, you just have to go on Cloud Hub. I'll link it in the description below, and you can install the security skill for yourself. I call it the security operator, and I've launched a version 2 of this just today. Cool. So another thing it did about security, it command execution rules. So it tightened the bound, so it's harder for bad prompts to sneak in something dangerous. And this is a little bit what my skill does as well, but those two combined is basically going to be make sure that you're safe as heck. And we got identity obfuscation, which is that logs are now significantly safer in a shared or multi-tenant environment. Now, the third thing, identity obfuscation. So logs are now significantly safer in a shared or multi-tenant environment. So this means that if somebody in your team or whatever is working on the same project, they're not going to get access to those details that are sensitive to you. As long as you're actually making sure that this is identified in your chat, it should be doing this automatically, but it's always good to be safer than sure. Another thing to note here, I forgot this about the API, but they also allowed you to integrate with Doubao, which is a Chinese API. I have no idea what this is, and also BytePlus. So I'm very curious to see what people are going to come up with in terms of workflows for using Seedance 2.0, because the results that I'm seeing from Seedance is absolutely mind-blowing. Now, obviously, it's not going to replace Hollywood anytime soon, but I do believe that there are going to be some crazy use cases when it comes to Seedance. That's now available inside of the beta version. And with that said, let's jump into the next one, which is big for me, because if you watch my setup video and you haven't set up OpenClaw yet, and you're just watching here and thinking about, oh, should I join the 1% of people on planet Earth that are 1%, maybe 0.003. If you feel like you don't know how to use OpenClaw yet, then click the link there and it will teach you how to set it up securely on a virtual private server to run for you 24/7. And in that video, I talk about Telegram, but I am making the switch over to Discord, and I just did it yesterday because what I noticed about Telegram is that, well, you have one long ass chat and it's just not sustainable when you want to do multiple different things. And I want to cost optimize, which means that I'm going to assign cost efficient models to each of my channels and use different models for those channels, right? For their different purpose. So for example, if I have a research agent, I don't want that agent to use Opus 4.5, which is going to cost me thousands, well, 500 maybe, 300. I instantly use, let's say, Sonnet 4.6 or 4.5, or now Gemini 3.1. And so basically, these updates for Discord are amazing. And the update basically makes it so that Discord feels more real-time, both in text and also in voice. So we got live text streams, which is basically you can see OpenClaw generate long answers live instead of waiting 30 seconds for one massive block. You're now on non-spam mentions. So basically it's so that live Discord replies don't bombard you with notifications. This is one issue that I felt, because OpenClaw send you multiple texts in a row instead of just one long chunk sometimes. And you'll basically get a ton of messages, which the sound, and it's just not pleasant. It's a quality of life function. The next thing right here is the VC voice support, which basically allows OpenClaw to join voice channels. And that's going to be so insane. So imagine that you're going into your voice channel and you're like talking to OpenClaw and it calls you a bitch, which is insane to me. But let's just say that, not like that, but let's just say that you join and you're talking about your next video idea. And for people that don't like typing, or maybe they don't want to use like flow, so whenever I want to say something, I just click on whisper flow, which will start dictating whatever I'm saying. And I'll paste that in. But if you want to have someone that you want to talk to and you want to like have a conversation about the best way about doing something, then this update is going to be amazing for this. The next one is about thread-bound sessions. And basically this means that your helper agents, so different little sub-agents there, are going to stay organized within a thread that you spawn them in, right? So this means that there's going to be no main chat hijacking, which means that like if you have a little helper going, it's not going to write in the main chat. It's just going to directly talk to your orchestrator agent, which is much more efficient and also helps your chats not to become really, really large. So an example of this would be in a Discord thread. You can spawn like a helper to research this or summarize this changelog, and then the sub agent stays locked to that thread so it doesn't hijack your main chat. And if you have multiple threads, then each one can have its own focused helper running in each of those threads. So there's going to be some playing around with this, because it's going to, a little bit more theoretical right now. But once people start playing around with it and start sharing their findings, well, then we're going to cover that as well. All right, the next one is not related to me whatsoever, but you have a cleaner iPhone chat experience, better background reliability, and also you got watch actions. Now, I'm a big believer in using traditional watches. I don't use smart watches whatsoever. I didn't wear my watch today. But basically, iOS app strips developer log spam, so messages look more like a normal chat. I believe that whenever people would try to use OpenClaw in the messages, it would start sending them like inside of your gateway, where it basically sends you how it's and the coding and the whole flow of what it's doing basically. And yeah, this is just gonna make that beautiful. And you also got a watch handoff, so you can hit a quick action on your watch and it properly hands off to the iPhone app instead of getting lost. Whatever that means. I don't use BytePlus, so I'm still gonna cover it, of course. And let's jump into number 6, which I think is probably one of the biggest ones here. One of the biggest ones, basically with prompt caching. So we got more consistent behavior and fewer weird, why did it respond like that moments in longer sessions. So if you've been using OpenClaw, if you haven't checked the setup video and get running, it's time to start playing with this. You're early. Basically, when you have a long chat with OpenClaw, you hit a certain point where you really feel that the quality is degrading. And this is basically going to help to really make the context more stable. So basically they add context and compared to adjusted what gets treated as stable context versus per message noise, which can reduce the random drift across your messages. And random drift is basically like, it'll start referencing things that are no longer active or relevant inside of the chat. So you can focus on the task at hand. So it doesn't like start referencing something that you were talking about an hour ago, right? So really, to make this in plain terms, your agent is less likely to get confused by changing message IDs and metadata for, well, it's cool. And that's basically everything that we have on the updates, but stick around. We're going to talk a little bit about the cool tips from the community. And I have two things here to share. And it comes from Foreshadowed here, Twitter, which basically say, biggest tip for OpenClaw. Does your agent do something you don't like? Hey, I didn't like that. Then you would say to OpenClaw, hey, I didn't like that. Do this instead. And then you write down what it should do instead. And then tell it to remember that in your files. Now, this is great, but I would recommend that you have sub-agents that are in different channels. So whenever, and each of those sub-agents is going to have its own file that it's going to pull context from, right? So I'm tinkering now with an Obsidian setup that is connected to my GitHub, so they sync together. And what's going to happen is basically that each of these agents have their own folder where we can store like inspiration, their voice, and their personality or whatever, right? And then we'll basically store the custom instructions each time. So our agents are recursively or proactively getting better than they were yesterday. And this one is also quite big here. We're going to go over no recognition 3349 on Reddit, which basically says things I wish someone told me before I almost gave up on OpenClaw. And here are the best tips, basically. So don't run everything through your best mode. And this is what I already talked about, right? So you want to talk about, do your heartbeats or checks and routine tasks. They don't need to be Opus 4. They can much preferably be a cheaper model, such as Haiku, Gemini Flash, or Olama. Now, I don't really tinker with Olama, and from what I've seen, it's a pretty shit model, but I would recommend using Gemini Flash or Claude Sonnet 4.5, and that has done really well for research tasks and for things that basically follow a very tight workflow where there's not a lot of reasoning and thinking involved, right? And the second tip is your agent needs rules, a lot of them. Out of the box, OpenClaw is dumb. I don't fully agree with this. It will loop, repeat itself, forget context, and make weird decisions. Yes, this happens, but honestly, OpenClaw is fantastic. It's pretty fucking smart. But basically they say you need to add guardrails to keep it in check. So create skills, blah, 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 blah. And yes, I would say that if you're not able to add a workflow, like actually direct it, here's what I need you to do. This step, this step, this step, and this step, then it's not going to be able to get that really well out of the box, but it is going to. And that is have, for instance, Cloud Hub, where you can find skills for your agents. And being updated every single day with new cool skills. And if you don't know how to install it, you just click on a skill, and then you can go and check the security of it, and then you can copy the URL for the skill, send it into your OpenClaw, and ask it to install that skill for you. Cool. Work overnight doesn't work the way you think. If you ask your agent to work on something and then close the chat, it forgets. Sessions are stateful only while open. For background work, you need cron jobs with isolated session targets. Right. So this is true to some degree. If you have your OpenClaw running on a VPS and you send it inside of Discord or inside of Telegram, and you tell it to continuously work on a task until the result is desirable, well, within your workflow, right? Or if you use, for example, if you're using Claude Deck, or if you have a mission control, then it can keep working on tasks as you go without you having to be there for it, right? So, but yeah, as I can see now that they actually had a paired with a cron that checks the queue. So basically, it is basically what I'm saying. So if it checks the queue for the tasks that you have inside of your mission control or inside of your Claude Deck. Don't start with one thing working end to end. This is what I said, right? So don't try to set up everything all at once. Every integration needs to be worked on separately, and then you can start stacking them like Lego bricks. Save what works, compaction loses over time, use state files, fill in your workspace docs, and store important decisions somewhere persistent. The less your agent has to relearn, the better it performs. Yes, very true. And also, I would say that after you would already state this inside of your soul. Basically, whenever something gets corrected, you should tell it to correct that inside of relevant files in your database. Now, I recommend that people set up a good database. So I'm using one where I'm doing YouTube research, Twitter research, LinkedIn research. I'm collecting hooks. I'm collecting statistics on my YouTube. I'm collecting Google Search Console data and analytics data, and having basically SEO work on my website. You can see already that for my new website called the Operator Vault, we're already for quite a lot of terms. I think we had about 130 users already on that website. And if we check my Google Search Console, you can see that I'm already ranking for a lot of terms. And I started this project just 2 days ago. I sent in my website to Google Search Console 2 days ago. And we're already sitting at a daily click ratio of 22 clicks. Or, yeah, well, how it goes, right? I'm going to do a video on how to do effective SEO using Claude Code, and then also how to pair it with OpenClaw. So if you want to be here for that, then I recommend sticking around, because, you know, a lot of people are building like these random workflows or these random ass, like, and they're really cool. Like there are some cool stuff that is being built that is very random, but it has no function. A lot of people are just building like polymarket bots that are just phishing you into trying to follow an account they control so that they can take your money. Like, I'm actually going to be focusing on creating real workflows that people can use to grow their business, to make more money, to get bigger personal branding, to create more videos, to help people. So yeah, if you want to see that, then of course, stick around. I'm always happy to share. All right, the model matters more than anything. Yes, I fully agree. The Claude Sonnet Opus GPT 5.2 works, but I don't like GPT 5.2 that much. Yes, yeah, Opus 4.5 remains my favorite model so far, and also Opus 4.6. And you're not bad at this. It's genuinely hard right now, and I fully agree. It is confusing. Like, we're all trying to figure out the best way to use OpenClaw. And if you want to be the one that figures out how to use OpenClaw in the best way possible, then you need to subscribe to the channel and make sure to join my free school group while it's still free, so that we can keep developing each other. Be kind, be generous, and share your knowledge with the world. And if you need any help, if you're a non-technical person, then I'm always available in the school to help out. And yeah, so that's basically it for today. Make sure to check out the school, of course, as said. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.